Watch the city fall asleep. Wake again in the morning. Spent the night tangled up. Never even closed our eyes. Should've known better. Only buy 2 bottles of wine. Not sure if we're just having fun. You're planning to be mine. I'm not thinking too hard right now. Take all the time that you give. I'm not thinking too hard right now. Never know how long we're gonna live. I told you all the places I want to go. You told me all the places that you've been. And I told you my greatest fear. You told me you were scared as hell of change. I wonder if I'll ever see the snow cover those downtown lights, standing 6 floors above on another kind of night. I'm not thinking too hard right now. Take all the time that you give. I'm not thinking too hard right now. Never know how long we're gonna live. And maybe like the Mississippi River, you'll end up down in New Orleans. You'll leave me in the city behind. We'll both go chasing our dreams. And I know I'm thinking too hard right now. Take all the time that you give. And I know I'm thinking too hard right now. Give you the time I can give. Thank you. Thank you very much, folks. This is a tune that I wrote about finding my biological family on Facebook at the age of 28. I know you've heard this song a dozen times before, I'm sure. We were DFS kids, not sure if we'd ever find a home again. We were fighting boys. I ain't seen you in 28 years. Think we're doing alright for being wards of state. Think we're doing alright brother, do you find it hard to close your eyes and let your guard down? Those years fade away. I'm here now. We won't walk alone. Think we're doing all right for being wards of the state. Think we're doing all right. We made our own fate. Well, I jumped on a train. I wondered if you're doing the same. I've slept on the street, not sure if you'd even know my name. I've been hungry and I prayed that you'd find a feast. I've been tired, I prayed you'd find peace. Think we're doing all right for being wards of the state. Think we're doing all right. We've made our own fate. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate you folks. You won't find salvation in the hills of Tennessee. And the dust from the desert wasn't as forgiving as you hope to be. When all your greatest plans have fallen through the floor, everybody's left you wanting more. I'll still be waiting if word from you I hear. Meet you in Chicago at the end of the year. You dragged yourself to the Golden Coast, but the tide wouldn't wash away your sin. And the peace that you found in the northern woods was shattered by the northern wind. And all your greatest plans were falling through the floor. Everybody's left you wanting more. I'll still be waiting if word from you I hear. Meet you in Chicago at the end of the year. When you left home, you didn't know how lonely the road could be. When you left home, you didn't know be. When all your greatest plans have fallen through the floor, everybody's left you wanting more. I'll still be waiting if word from you I hear. Meet you in Chicago at the end of the year. I'll meet you in Chicago at the end of the year. Hey, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thank you. It's nice to play in front of human beings again. Last year was terrible. Playing in front of computer screens, terrible. This is a song about taking care of each other. We don't pray for manna anymore. Believe all the stories you told us before. Our blood and our sweat we have spilled. There'll be enough seats at the table we'll build. May our labor make more than dollars and cents to pay for our debts and our slumlords' rents. Leave for our children more than sinking ships. Prayers sang from our parents' lips. They sold us all secondhand dreams. We drank them all down like snake oil steam. They say it's not symptomatic of the times. They painted the proof in the chalk outlines. Our voices are loud and they're screaming for truth. More than just pledges we said in our youth. Sing in your chorus and stand in line. Throw back the tear gas every time. I recommend that you start to roll. Or get out of our goddamn way. We're all so sick and tired of being told we got nothing to say. And we're still standing in Haymarket Square. Injustice still hangs in the air. You're invited to the party and they'll open their doors, work in their factories and die in their wars. Thank you so much, folks. You're worried about the poison I'm putting in my body. but you know nothing of the venom in my veins. Don't worry about this boat, it's a little leaky and shoddy. They bronzed my shoes and they changed my name. I've got maps under my skin to remind me of all the places that I've been. I've got maps under my skin to remind me of all the places that I've been. In case I wander far away, in case I wander far away. You're praying about the money I can't seem to save. I've earned all the holes in my clothes and my shoes. And I might miss a meal, but I promise to be brave. 'Cause boy, you gotta smile when you're singing the blues. To you, a tiny stream can be the Nile River in your mind. To you, a tiny stream can be the Nile River in your mind. 'Cause boy, you're still a dreamer. 'Cause boy, you're still a dreamer. You're worried about the time I'm spending alone. All the ghosts and demons in my mind. You forget when I was a little boy, I never had a home. I'm not afraid of all the sin I might find. And Jacob wrestled the Lord in the desert with his bare hands. Jacob wrestled the Lord in the desert with his bare hands. Maybe I'm a liar. Maybe I'm a liar. So much, folks.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Stacy Walker, and I have the honor and privilege of representing you all on the Linn County Board of Supervisors. Before I begin, I'd like to take a moment of silence for the fallen service members in Afghanistan, American diplomatic personnel, and all other people, including peace-loving Afghans seeking refuge from the conflict. Thank you. I'd also like to thank Julie Parisi and her team here at Newbo Market for allowing us to use this beautiful community space today. And finally, I'd like to extend a special thank you to a lot of candidates we have running for office today. I know there are a lot out there, and I don't want to get in the business of running through the names in case I forget anything, but if you are running for public office, please stand and be recognized. I know we've got some Our Revolution endorsed candidates out there too, and I encourage you all to check out Our Revolution Iowa on the Facebook page as well. Dearly beloveds, we are gathered here today to learn about some important things happening at the federal level. And we've got a very special guest who will soon give us a master class on what's happening in Congress. But the long and short of it is, the proposed budget reconciliation package would be one of the most consequential pieces of legislation since the New Deal. And when this budget is passed, coupled with the work of the American Rescue Plan, we'll be able to extend the wildly popular and much needed child tax credit. We'll be able to guarantee free pre-K for all 3- and 4-year-olds. We'll be able to ensure that no family pays more than 7% of their income on child care. I know Tamara Marcus will like this. We'll be able to finally confront the climate chaos engulfing this planet in a meaningful way. We'll expand Medicare by lowering the eligibility age, and maybe, just maybe, we can even make community college tuition-free for all people with a desire to learn. Now, all of this is important and meaningful, but what's truly significant about this is that all of these proposals enjoy support from people across the political spectrum. When you ask Republicans and Independents and Democrats if we should expand Medicare, 66% agree. When you ask Republicans, Independents, and Democrats if we should be investing in modernizing our public schools, 74% agree. When you ask about investing in long-term care for seniors and individuals with disabilities, 81% agree. 81%. Now, I'm no mathematician, but that sounds like a majority to me. These policies and proposals that will help the American people are extremely popular. But unfortunately, the only people who don't support this agenda are elected Republicans in Congress, like Representative Ashley Henson and her friends like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Senator Ted Cruz, who was here yesterday raising money for. We are looking at a situation where if this budget is going to pass, it may not get one single Republican vote. And I think that says more about the Republican Party than it does about Americans, the majority of whom agree that our country is hurting and the plans the Democrats are offering will help. In times of great challenge, Americans have always been able to put politics aside to come together to help one another. Folks, there's no other way to put it. We are in a time of great challenge, and we need our leaders to stand and deliver. As your representative, it is my honor to introduce to you today a man who has been on the front lines fighting for working people for decades. A man who has made it his mission to go into the heart of Trump country and explain how these policies will improve the lives of every American. A man who has been calling for the rich to pay their fair share in taxes before it was cool and before billionaires were zooming off into space. A man who is steadfast in his convictions and his belief that if we stand together, we can bend that moral arc slowly but surely toward justice. He is the chairman of the Senate Budget Committee and a dear, dear friend of mine. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you, Cedar Rapids. Love you too. And thanks everybody for coming out. Let me thank KC Joe Collins for his music. And let me thank Supervisor Stacy Walker for the great work that he does for the people of Iowa and for being here today. If I had the time, I would do meetings like this in 50 states in the country. I love doing this stuff. And the reason I love doing this stuff is I think that public officials in Washington, the corporate media in general, does not do a good job in explaining what goes on in our nation's capital. You can agree with this reconciliation bill and the infrastructure bill. You can disagree with it, that's fine, it's a democracy. But you gotta know what is in the bill. And that's why I'm here today. We were in Indiana the other day, in Michigan yesterday, and we're here today. And what we do, in Vermont, I do zillions of town meetings, and what we do is just like this. We talk about the real issues facing working families. And you can't do that in a 10-second soundbite. And one of the things we do is just bring up local people to talk about what their issues are, what their dreams are, what they would like to see their elected officials do. It's a very radical concept. It's called democracy. And after I'm through, we're going to hear from Kay Pence, who's a retired union representative from the CWA. We're going to hear from Jackson Barraga, who's the president of Acme Electric and IBEW Local 405 Union Shop. We're going to hear from Natalie Tapscott, who's from Decorah and a student at the University of Iowa. And we're going to hear from Norma Izakere, who is a mother and truck driver from Muscatine. And after that, we'll simply open it up. And I thank all of our speakers for being here, and we'll open it up to your questions and your comments. Let me begin by saying what you all already know. We are living in very, very difficult times. And it is imperative that we acknowledge the many crises that we face. We can't sweep them under the rug. I wish I could come here and tell you, hey, everything is great, everything is wonderful. It is not. What we are seeing right now, is everybody here knows, and many of you are wearing masks, is we are looking at a COVID pandemic, which has claimed the lives of well over 600,000 Americans. And as we speak, in hospitals throughout the country, the ICUs are filled up with people, And sadly, many of those people were not vaccinated. And today, if I may, just urge everybody who is watching this on live stream, who is here today, please get vaccinated. Please save your own lives and your kids' lives and your friends' lives. And I also want to say today a special word of thanks to some real heroes and heroines who are out there, and that is the medical profession who are working day and night to save our lives. People don't know this. People don't know this. We have lost over 3,600 doctors, nurses, and medical personnel as a result of COVID, many of them younger people who died while treating patients. So you got a COVID pandemic out there impacting us and the world, and we get discouraged. We get discouraged. We thought we had it licked, and then you got this new Delta variant out there running havoc all over the country. And then on top of that, on top of the climate, on top of the pandemic, we have climate change, which is causing massive destruction in our country and around the world. California and Oregon are on fire. Greece is burning. There were massive floods recently in Germany and Belgium, and the smoke from the Siberian fire, Siberia, carried thousands of miles. I can tell you that in Vermont, unbelievably, in Vermont, the quality of our air deteriorated because of smoke from Oregon 3,000 miles away. Italy recently experienced the hottest day ever. In Europe, July was the hottest month ever recorded. And drought throughout the world is reducing food production. And today, literally today, on the 16th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Ida is now slamming into Louisiana coastline with winds of 150 miles per hour. And the forecast is that over a foot of rain is going to drop today in New Orleans. And our hopes and prayers for the people of Louisiana is that they get through this as best they can. Now, hurricanes and extreme weather disturbances are nothing new. They have always taken place. But what is new is the frequency and the severity of these extreme weather disturbances, and nobody now can doubt that that is caused by climate change. And I know there are some people who are out there saying, well, this is really terrible, the drought, the fires, the floods, really bad, but next year it will become better. This is, once in 100 years. That is not the case. Everything being equal, unless we get our act together, the situation will become worse. But I don't have to explain that to the people of Cedar Rapids. I don't need to remind you, you know better than I do, that just 13 years ago, in 2008, the stage right here, this location, was 8 feet underwater. In 2008, the Cedar River, right next to us, crested to a record of 31 feet and displaced more than 18,000 residents just in this community, damaging nearly 6,000 homes. Cedar Rapids experienced what scientists call a 100-year flood. But we know that the so-called 100-year flood is becoming more likely to happen every year. And I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but scientists from Princeton and MIT are now telling us that as global temperatures continue to rise, 100-year floods could become annual occurrences in parts of the United States. That means a flood like 2008 every year. That is not sustainable for Iowa And what's going on in Louisiana is not sustainable for them. So we're dealing right now with COVID, we're dealing with climate, and in Afghanistan, the good news is that after 20 years of war, after the loss of 2,400 members of the U.S. Armed Forces, and after $1 trillion of spending, our troops are finally coming home, and that war for us is coming to an end. The bad news, of course, and it is bad news, is that the corrupt government of Afghanistan collapsed faster than we thought. The Taliban is now in power, and we are seeing death and chaos at the airport in Kabul as desperate people try to leave. And our hearts go out to not only the people of Afghanistan, but the families of the 13 American troops who died there. And just we want to applaud the bravery of all of our troops in getting well over 80,000 people out of Afghanistan in a short period of time. And I could go on and on. So the truth is, there's a lot of tough news out there. And in the midst of that, it is very easy for us to say, I'm sick and tired of watching TV, of listening to the radio, of hearing all this bad news. I just can't deal with it anymore. It's understandable. These are tough times. This last year has probably been the hardest year for all of us in our lifetime. We have lost friends. We have not been able to socialize. Our kids have not been able to go to school. The economy tanked. These are tough times. But I am here today in Iowa to tell you that I am absolutely convinced that if we as Americans have the courage and the determination to stand together, to stand up in the fight for justice, the fight for economic justice, social justice, racial justice, environmental justice, if we can stand together and not allow politicians to divide us up by the color of our skin or where we were born or our sexual orientation, if we can stand together, we can not only address these awful problems, but we can move this country forward in a very different and positive direction. So these are tough times. These are tough times for the country. But this is the moment that tests our mettle. Do we stand and fight? We will. And we're going to prevail. And I want to tell you that we are already making significant progress in that struggle. As a result of the American Rescue Plan that was passed at 5 o'clock in the morning a number of months ago with the vote of the Vice President of the United States, because we had a 50-50 tie. We didn't get any Republican support. But as a result of the American Rescue Plan, our country is now on the way toward a major and rapid recovery from the economic collapse we experienced during the pandemic. Just think back to where we were a year ago. Massive unemployment. In Vermont, and I'm sure in Iowa, we had long lines of people in their cars waiting for an emergency food box. People who had never asked for that kind of help before. That was going on all over America. Well, we have come a long way in ending those food lines. We have cut unemployment in half. Wages are going up. We've got a long way to go, but let's remember where we were and the progress that we have made. And let me tell you what else we have accomplished. As a result of the direct payments that were made during the American Rescue Plan to working class families in Vermont, in Iowa, and all across this country, and as a result of the $300 per month payment that working parents are now receiving for their young children, we have reduced childhood poverty in the United States by 50%. That is an extraordinary accomplishment. The kids are our future, and in the richest country in the history of the world, we should not have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major nation on earth, and we are making real progress, allowing working moms and dads the ability to raise their kids with security and dignity. But obviously, we still have a long way to go to create an economy that works for all of us and not just the 1%, not just the billionaire class, not just wealthy campaign contributors. So let me take a moment as chairman of the U.S. Senate Budget Committee to tell you what we are doing right now to create an economy that is fairer and more equitable. We are now working on two major pieces of legislation that, when passed, will create millions of good-paying jobs and address issues in this country that have been ignored for a very, very long time. The first piece of legislation, which has already passed the Senate, is a bipartisan infrastructure bill that will invest some $550 billion in new money in rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our water systems, our wastewater plants. It will expand broadband and put money into public transit. This bill received the support of all 50 members of the Democratic caucus and 19 Republicans. 30 Republicans voted against. Of the elderly, of the sick, and the poor. And on top of all of that, what this legislation says is that now is the time for the United States of America to lead the world in the existential struggle against climate change. And by the way, so that everybody knows that, as we speak right now, and as this bill is being worked on, the details are still being worked on. What I'm going to give you is an overview. But right now, committees in the House and the Senate are working on this bill. Right now, you have every powerful special interest and their lobbyists flooding Capitol Hill trying to defeat this legislation. You got the drug companies out there who charge us the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. They don't want us to lower the cost of prescription drugs. You got the healthcare industry out there who doesn't want us to expand Medicare. You got the fossil fuel industry out there that doesn't want us to address climate change. And you got the billionaire class out there who's going to do everything that they possibly can to make sure they don't start paying their fair share of taxes. But if we stand together, we're going to beat those special interests and deliver for the working class of this country. Now, the reason that this bill is called the Reconciliation Bill, there's nobody in the world who knows what that means. And I will tell you that if you ever have trouble sleeping, if you have insomnia, read Senate rules. You can find them on the internet. It'll put you to sleep in about 3 seconds. All right? It is complicated, it is boring, etc. But what reconciliation is about is a means to get significant legislation done without having to get the 60 votes that you normally need. Now, is reconciliation, the use of reconciliation, a radical idea? No, it's not. Republicans have used it under Trump in two major efforts. They were successful in using reconciliation to give massive tax breaks to the wealthiest people in this country and to the largest corporations. That's what they used reconciliation for. They were unsuccessful by one vote in repealing the Affordable Care Act, which would have thrown over 30 million Americans off of the health care that they had. So the use of reconciliation is not a new concept. What is new about this bill is that we are going to use it to improve lives for working families, not just the wealthy and the powerful. Now, this bill will, in all likelihood, not get one Republican vote. And what makes it, frankly, very difficult. We got 50 votes, 50 people in the Democratic caucus in the Senate, 50 Republicans. In the House, Democrats at a 435-member body have, I think, a 3 or 4 vote margin. So we have a very, very slim margin to operate, and that ain't easy. But I do find it rather shocking that Republicans who just a few years ago were prepared to vote for massive tax breaks for the rich, to throw 30 million people off of health care, that at this point, we cannot get one Republican vote to help the working families of Iowa and America. Now, while the budget for this bill, $3.5 trillion budget, was passed both in the House and the Senate, the line item details are still being worked out literally as we speak. But what I wanted to use this opportunity for is to give you an overview of what we are trying to do so that you appreciate the comprehensiveness and the extent of what this bill is attempting to accomplish. And I also want to put this legislation in a broad context. In America today, the gap between the very, very wealthy and everybody else is wider today than it has been in 100 years. And in my view, we are moving rapidly toward an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires and large corporations have enormous, enormous power over the economic and political life of this country. Today, the two wealthiest people in America own more wealth than the bottom 40%. You got that? 2 people own more wealth than the bottom 40%. Top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 92%. And since the Wall Street crash of 2009, 45% of all new income has gone to the 1%. During the pandemic that we're in right now, 700 billionaires, not many, in America have increased their wealth by $1.8 trillion. At the same time as essential workers, people who do public transportation, people who work in grocery stores, people who work in healthcare, have died by the thousands. So we are living in a nation where the people on top are doing phenomenally well. They have so much money, they don't even know what to do with it. And now some of them are off in outer space, spending their billions. Well, we think maybe it might be a good idea before you go off to outer space to start paying attention to the struggles of working families on the ground. Meanwhile, while the very rich become much richer, working families from coast to coast are struggling to put food on the table. 90 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured in terms of health care. We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Almost 600,000 Americans are sleeping out on the streets. and millions of young people are struggling with outrageous levels of student debt, while hundreds of thousands of bright young kids can't afford to get a higher education. Incredibly, since 1971, at a time when we have seen an explosion of technology and worker productivity, the average American worker is not making a nickel more in real wages, inflation accounted for wages, than they did 50 years ago. That's the state of the economy. And we need to pass this legislation because in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, it is simply not morally acceptable that so many good people are struggling economically to provide for their families, and when half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. We can do better than that. And we need to pass this legislation because we are sick and tired of seeing so many of our people earn starvation wages. And I have been all over your great state, and I've talked to the people who make $9, $10 an hour. And that is why this legislation, as it begins to address the long neglected needs of America, will create millions of good paying jobs. So let me briefly tell you what is in this legislation, and Stacy touched on some of the points. My Republican colleagues are saying, well, we can't support this bill because it's going to raise taxes. Well, they're right. At a time when billionaires in this country don't pay a nickel in federal income tax in a given year, we are going to raise taxes on the billionaire class. And at a time when large profitable corporations make billions in profit and in some years do not pay a penny in federal income taxes, yes, we are going to demand that those corporations start paying their fair share of taxes. As a result of the American Rescue Plan that Congress passed a number of months ago, as I mentioned earlier, we have significantly reduced childhood poverty and helped families, young families, single moms in Iowa and Vermont and around this country be better able to take care of their kids. What this reconciliation bill is about is whether or not we extend those payments. The way the American Rescue Plan was written, by definition, it was an emergency bill in the middle of the pandemic. And we said we got to help those families right now. If we do not pass the reconciliation bill, those payments end at the end of this year. That is not acceptable. Working families need that help, and this bill will extend that help for years to come. Furthermore, this bill will address an issue we don't talk enough about, and that is the dysfunctionality of child care in America. Now, here we are as a nation, we talk about how much we love our kids, they're the future of America, et cetera, and yet, in Vermont, I don't know what it is in Iowa, but nationally and in Vermont, it costs about $15,000 a year for a child in childcare. $15,000. So if you are earning $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, you're spending a huge chunk of your money to have your kid taken care of so you can go to work. That is wrong. And under this bill, we will move toward a situation where no household in America spends more than 7% of their income for child care, and many lower-income families will have child care for free. And when we do that, by the way, we're going to address multiple crises within child care. That is, number one, child care workers today earn starvation wages, We're going to raise those wages. In many parts of the country, working families cannot even find childcare space. We're going to build the facilities. And on top of all of that, remember what we're doing here for the kids. $300 per child for working families. Radical change in childcare. We're going to make pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds universal and free. That means essentially expanding public education by an additional 2 years. And by the way, just in passing, right now in Vermont, don't know the story here in Iowa, we have a worker shortage. There are many good-paying, unfilled jobs where employers cannot find workers. When we do the right thing for childcare and pre-K, more than 1 million workers, mostly women, will be able to rejoin the workforce. Let me tell you what else we're doing in this bill. This is a lot of fun. The United States today is the only major country, and virtually the only country on earth, very few countries, that does not guarantee paid family and medical leave. What am I talking about? What I'm talking about is that if you as a worker get sick and you have to stay home, you're not going to get paid. If your kid gets sick and you have to stay home, your mom gets sick, your dad gets sick, and you have to stay home, you do not get paid. What I'm talking about is the vulgarity that in this country, if you are a low-income woman and you give birth today to a baby, you may have to go back to work in a week because your family needs the income. Anybody here know what kind of programs exist in Europe, Scandinavia, when families have babies? Anybody here know out of curiosity? Do you know that in countries all over the world, mothers get 7, 8, 9 months off to bond with their babies at full pay or 3/4 pay or whatever it may be? Dads get time off to bond with their babies. And maybe in America, we should not force low-income women to go back to work because they don't have the money to take care of their families. So this bill, for the first time, will finally provide up to 3 weeks of paid family and medical leave for the working people of this country. And when we talk about education, I think everybody here knows that if we are going to compete globally in the international economy, we need the best educated workforce in the world. It is insane that we're forcing young people to go tens and tens of thousands of dollars into debt in order to get the education they need to do the important work that has to be done. And it is disgraceful that so many of our young people cannot even go to higher education because they lack the money. Now, my own view, and I'm just my own view, is that I think we should make public colleges and universities tuition free. We should cancel all student debt in this country. That is my view. Unfortunately, I got 49 other members of the caucus. They don't all agree with me. But what we are doing here in this bill is making 2 years of community college tuition free. And that means that if you want to go to a 4-year school, you get your credits for 2 years, you could transfer them to University of Iowa, Iowa State, or wherever you want to go, and you get those credits already paid for. In addition to that, we are going to significantly increase Pell Grants, and we're going to increase funding for historically black colleges and universities. And what that means is not only will those credits be transferable to a 4-year school, it means that for many young people out there, they want to get into the building trades, a lot of construction work going on. They want to earn $60,000, $70,000 a year doing an important craft. Going to community college tuition-free will give them that ability. I will tell you right now that in Vermont, again, I don't know about Iowa, we have a massive shortage of nurses. This will give opportunity to young people who want to go into the enormously important profession of nursing, the opportunity to get that education to do that work. In America today, we got some 600,000 people who are homeless, many sleeping out on the streets. 2 blocks from the nation's capital, there is a homeless encampment of people living out in tents. 2 blocks away from the nation's capital, we have some 18 million households in America who are spending 50% of their limited incomes on housing. This legislation will pump more money into the construction of low-income and affordable housing than any bill in the history of this country. And needless to say, when we do that, we're going to create an enormous number of good-paying jobs. Further, we are an aging society. Iowa is an aging state. Vermont is an aging state. The nation is aging. And whether people have severe disabilities or whether they are just getting old, we have millions of people who would prefer to stay in their own homes, get care in their homes, rather than be forced into a nursing home. This bill, in an unprecedented way, will put a significant amount of money into home health care and pay those workers a living wage. Now, as many of you know, the United States is the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a human right. We're the only one. We pay by far the highest amount of money per person for health care, somewhere around $10,000, and yet 90 million people are uninsured or underinsured. We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, and up to 60,000 people a year die because they don't get to a doctor on time. Now, my own view, again, I am speaking only for myself, my own view is that health care is a human right, not a privilege. That we need to guarantee health care to all people, and that we should do it through a Medicare for all single-payer program. This bill does not do that. I wish it did, but it does not. But what this bill does do is several things. It will expand Medicare to cover dental care, hearing aids, and eyeglasses. We will bring about the most significant reforms of Medicare in 50 years. Too many of our elderly people in Vermont, and I'm sure in Iowa, trying to digest their food without teeth in their mouths because they can't afford dentures. They can't talk to their grandchildren because they can't afford hearing aids. Many of them cannot see properly. They cannot afford glasses. So we're going to reform and expand Medicare, and I'll tell you how we're going to fund that. We're going to fund that program by having Medicare negotiate prescription drug prices with the pharmaceutical industry. Right now, today, pharmaceutical industry can charge us any price they want for any drugs. They never lose. They control the United States Congress. We are on the verge, I hope, of finally bringing about the first defeat of the very powerful pharmaceutical industry in the history of this country. So in other words, and there's much more that's in this bill, one of the areas that I have been concerned about is in rural areas all over America, we don't have the doctors and the dentists and the nurses that we need. This bill will go a long way to making that happen. There's a lot of other stuff in the bill. But I want to say a word about another issue. So I think some of our friends think they could drown us out. Ain't gonna happen. And what this bill does is, in an unprecedented way, make massive investments in having the United States lead the world in combating climate change and lowering greenhouse gas emissions. It really does pain me, and it really is, you know, I understand politics and people have different points of view, et cetera, but it is just hard for me literally to understand how Republican colleagues who are dads and moms and grandfathers and grandmothers are not worried about what climate change is doing to the future of this planet for their own kids and grandchildren. I just don't get that. And I don't get a fossil fuel industry which is prepared to make more and more short-term profits while they are destroying the climate and this country and the world. So this bill finally begins to invest significantly in moving this country to carbon emissions, to moving this country to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And one of the provisions in this bill that I have championed for a long time with other members, and I'm very excited about this, is the creation of a civilian climate corps. And what this will do, and I want you to appreciate this, you got a younger generation out there, and I've seen young people all over the country who are passionately concerned about climate change. This bill will provide them with good wages and educational benefits as they go out helping us lead the world in transforming our energy system. We're going to put billions of dollars into a civilian climate corps. Hundreds of thousands of young people will have the jobs they want, helping us deal with this existential threat. So, here we are in a pivotal moment in American history. We're facing a pandemic, we're facing climate change, we're facing Afghanistan, we're facing massive levels of income and wealth inequality, we're facing working families and lower income families struggling in a way that they have not struggled for a very long time. And what this legislation is about to me personally is not just improving life for millions and millions of working people. It is making people understand that government can, in fact, in a democratic society, work for working families and not just the wealthy and the powerful. It is no secret. I'm not telling you what you don't know. There are millions of people in America, a significant number of people, they have given up on American democracy. They're working longer hours for low wages. They've seen their jobs go to China. They can't afford childcare. They can't afford health care. They can't afford to send their kids to college. They can't afford housing. And they look around, does anybody care about me? Or you're just worried in Washington about your wealthy campaign contributors? People in Vermont feel that way. People in Iowa feel that way. People all over this country feel that way. And the time is long overdue for us to restore the faith of the American people in a democratic society. Not in conspiracy theories, not in authoritarianism, but in a democratic society where government works for all and not just the wealthy and the powerful. So what this bill is about, it is helping millions and millions of people who are in pain today. It is helping to address the existential threat facing the planet in terms of climate change. But hopefully it is a step forward in helping working class families all over this country understand that in a democratic society, we can have a government that works for them and not just the rich and the powerful. So I want to thank all of you for being here. This is, I think, the most unusual U.S. Senate budget hearing that has ever taken place. Doesn't usually take place in Cedar Rapids or any other place. Takes place in the U.S. Senate. But I thought it's important to bring the issues that we're dealing with to the people of America. So I'm really proud to be here, and I thank you for being here. What I want to do now, is bring forward some folks, local people, to talk about what's going on in their lives and what their hopes are. And let's begin, and then after that, we'll take questions from the audience. So let's begin with Kay Pence, who is a retired Communications Workers of America union representative. She's a senior on Medicare. Kay, thanks very much for being with us.
Hi, I'm Kay Pence. I'm the Vice President of the Alliance for Retired Americans for Iowa. And we have 32,000 members in Iowa, 4.4 million members nationwide. We're a grassroots advocacy group looking out for senior issues. And it's a pleasure to be here with Senator Sanders, and it's probably no surprise to any of you. Senator Sanders has a 100% lifetime voting record on senior issues. We are in full support of the Democrats' $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation package. Now we need to turn that framework into the Build Back Better bill and make retirement more secure for millions of current and future retirees. When I retired and transitioned to Medicare, I had an excellent employer-based insurance plan that my union had negotiated, and I was kind of surprised at all the gaps in Medicare. When Medicare was started in 1965, it was patterned after a good Blue Cross Blue Shield policy. However, employer-based plans improved over the years to include additional benefits. Medicare remained stuck in the 60s. Seniors needed to purchase additional policies to cover gaps or go without. Don't get me wrong, Medicare has saved generations of older Americans from being wiped out by medical bills, but it could be better. It's time for us to strengthen it and expand it. The best way to strengthen Medicare is to allow it to negotiate lower prices for prescription drugs. Americans pay the highest prices for prescription drugs in the world, in part because the largest purchaser of prescription drugs on the planet is barred from negotiating a fair price. 25% of Americans report that they did not take a prescription their doctor prescribed due to the cost. It's just common sense. Our government negotiates prices for everything except prescription drugs, and it's past time to do that. Estimated cost savings between $11 and $15 billion a year would be saved by negotiations. And I'm sure you've already seen all the commercials trying to scare us. It's the drug companies afraid that they're going to lose some of their monopoly profits. Those savings can be used to strengthen Medicare to include dental, hearing, and vision coverage. I cannot express enough what a difference lower drug prices and access to vision, dental, and hearing would make for seniors who rely on Medicare. These sensory benefits are not luxuries. They are essential healthcare services that can improve the quality of life and make people healthier at a very reasonable cost. Right now, half of Medicare beneficiaries lack dental coverage. As a result, 49% have not visited a dentist in the last year, which puts them at risk of other health problems. People with chronic diseases such as arthritis, diabetes, and heart disease are more likely to develop gum disease, but less likely to get dental care. It's pretty hard to maintain a healthy diet if you're in pain, lose teeth, or have poorly fitting dentures. Nearly 3/4 of Medicare beneficiaries do not have vision coverage. This is despite the fact that 92% of Medicare beneficiaries require corrective lenses. Poor vision increases the risk of falls, leading to fractures, hospitalizations, disabilities, and premature death. Regular eye exams can catch problems early while they're still treatable. And millions of seniors go without hearing aids because of the costs. Sensory impairments increase vulnerability and decrease independence in performing the activities of daily living, from getting from place to place or even communicating. Expanding Medicare to include these essential benefits will be life-changing for older Americans. On behalf of the member of the Iowa Alliance for Retired Americans and all older Americans, I thank Senator Sanders for your leadership, support, and hard work. And we are here to help you in any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kay. Our next speaker is Jackson Barraga, who is the president of Acme Electric. Acme was founded by his grandfather in 1950, and they received PPP loans to help keep over 100 jobs. Jackson?
So I'd like to start by saying thank you to Senator Sanders and his team for inviting me here to speak. The last year has been tough on all of us, I think. But to his point, PPP helped us out in many ways that we did not see coming. But I guess I'll start by introducing myself. I am Jackson Barraga. I'm the president of Acme Electric. As he mentioned, my grandfather started Acme in 1950. We are a union electrical contractor here based out of Cedar Rapids. We handle residential, large, small commercial, as well as industrial applications. And last March, it seemed like about overnight, we went from having a good amount of work to we got about 100 guys that need places to go and need to get paychecks. So it was kind of unnerving. And I will say the benefit of getting a PPP loan and allowing us to get our entire workforce, not only retain our workforce, but keep them gainfully employed, not have to have them worry about how they're going to pay their mortgage, how they're going to pay their car payments, anything along those lines. It was very gratifying, and I was very appreciative as a business leader to be able to do that. When we went from COVID to then come August, derecho hit, it was again at the flip of a switch. It went from very little work to be done to all hands on deck. And one of the largest benefits of the PPP program was allowing us, like I said, to retain our workforce. And it's tough to quantify, but when derecho hit, I can tell you that it was a benefit to not have to go out and search for people and rehire employees, because everyone needed help. There was more work than anyone in town could handle. It was a community effort, and it was an absolute benefit of the PPP program to be able to have our workforce still at hand. So all I'll say, I will keep it brief, but very thankful. It was immensely helpful. And lastly, I will say watching the community rally around after derecho, it was really inspiring. So thank you.
I would urge people, and I want to thank Jackson for his remarks. It is very easy to beat up on the big bad federal government. We know it is bureaucratic. We know it is far, far from perfect. But go into any small business and ask them, did the PPP program, the aid to small businesses in the midst of that terrible economic downturn, help you? And they will say exactly what Jackson said. And that is it helped them maintain their workforce. It helped workers who would have been in desperation maintain the ability to take care of their families. So Jackson, thanks very much for your statement. Natalie Tapscott is from Decorah and a student at the University of Iowa studying environmental science. Natalie, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Senator Sanders, for coming and speaking to us and allowing me the opportunity to speak a little bit about my passions for the environment. So I am a sophomore at the University of Iowa who is studying political science, environmental planning and policy, and economics. I grew up in a house with two parents who were both in the field of early childhood education. They were both educators who understood the importance of play and exploration for the growth of children. The children in their care, which included myself and my younger brother, who's here today, were fortunate to have a lot of outdoor time at daycare. We'd make mud pies and plant seeds and go on explorations to local parks. These types of adventures were pivotal in establishing my deep gratitude for natural spaces. When I was in 3rd grade, my family moved from Des Moines to Decorah, Iowa. With this allowed new places to explore. We hiked and fished and biked throughout the Driftless. About this time is also when we started to learn about climate change in science classes. We kind of learned the basics, but we didn't understand that humans had such an impact on the rate at which this climate was changing. As a child, I kind of accepted that that's the way that it was. It wasn't until much later, when I continued to do my own research and took more classes in science and social studies, that I became aware of the importance of this issue. That's when it also started to feel overwhelming. After years of going to the same parks and natural places, I was starting to see this toll that a lack of environmental policies and inadequate funding were beginning to take on the places that I cared so much about. For example, Backbone State Park in Strawberry Point, Iowa is pretty close to here. It's a place that my family and I loved to go to when I was growing up. Recently, when I'm driving home from Iowa City to Decorah, I'll stop there sometimes just to stretch your legs and remember the places that I loved so much. It hurts to see the signs that are on the beach that say, "Don't go into the water because of bacterial growth from farm runoff." It hurts to know that my political leaders aren't doing anything about this. How can a place that I once swam in be so polluted that I no longer can go in it? This decline in the planet's health and a lack of leadership is so frustrating for me as a young person and other young people that I talk to. We know that it's our generation and the generations of us below us that will feel these impacts the worst. To see our leadership in this state do nothing about it again and again in legislative sessions is so heartbreaking, while the air, water, and soil quality around us deteriorate, and an increased frequency and severity of floods and storms wreak havoc on our cities, something that this community knows greatly about. The infrastructure to solve these problems is not being properly funded in this state. The type of lifestyle I want to live in my future is not something that I can see taking place in the way that Iowa is moving right now. I've gotten involved with political groups and environmental organizations at the University of Iowa. I'm optimistic that with this new generation of climate-minded young adults who understand that climate is the issue of our time, that there will be change. And with politicians like Senator Sanders who are working for these at the federal level. I'm excited for an infrastructure bill that addresses the 21st century infrastructure issues and creates a civilian climate corps for young people like me. The bills and plans to be passed will prioritize the climate as it should be prioritized and give myself and like-minded individuals the power to create change in a system that for so long felt like it didn't belong to us. I'm excited to be a part of that. Thank you.
We are depending, thank you, Natalie, we are depending on her generation to help save this planet. Norma Izakayera is a mother and truck driver from Muscatine. Her family has experienced the outrageous cost of prescription drugs. Norma, thanks for being with us.
Hello, I'd like to thank Senator Sanders and his team for inviting me to speak. This is the first time I've ever spoke in front of anybody, so I am a little bit nervous. I am, thank you. I am, like many of you, a working class citizen, and I have a passion about Medicare for all. And just as Senator Sanders said, health insurance is a right. It's not a privilege. What kind of America are we when someone cannot go and get the care they need when they're ill? I'm sharing my story, and forgive me if I get emotional. On June 3rd of 2018, I lost my eldest son to successful suicide at the age of 28. My son was a working class citizen also, worked since age 16, and he struggled with a mental illness, depression. At the time he was working, and so he did have health insurance and could afford medication. Then he was diagnosed in, I would say a year later, once he started being treated for the mental illness, he was diagnosed with diabetes. Due to the diabetes, he ended up losing his job, became unemployed, was 28, therefore could not be covered under our health insurance. Fortunately, he could move back home, so he did move back home with us and lived at home with us. Even us as his parents didn't know the extent of his struggles with the diabetes. He didn't have health care, so when he could get what insulin he could, he had to try and ration it. So what happened is, with the diabetes and not being able to get a job, he just felt like a failure. Didn't have anywhere to turn. You know, where was he to go? We could only help him so much ourselves. You know, we're working class. We have 3 sons, a mortgage, car payments. We pay ourselves close to $10,000 a year for health insurance. We pay $184 a month. So really that adds up to our mortgage minus the escrow a month for what we pay for our health insurance. And still on top of that, pay for prescriptions and, you know, out of pockets for things. But I feel that our system failed my son, because if there would have been somewhere where he could have gone to get the help he needed, to get the medication he needed, not only for the diabetes, but for the mental health, not even just medication, but counseling, you know, therapy, he might still be here with us today. But unfortunately, he's not. So that's why I feel strongly that America does need Medicare for all. We are all entitled to health insurance. Thank you.
Norma, thank you very much for sharing your tragic experience with us. And I just want to mention, a couple of years ago, I was in Detroit, and I took a busload of folks from the Midwest into Ontario, Canada. We weren't there to sightsee. We were there to buy insulin, actually. We ended up, and of course, all of this was planned out. We went to a drugstore in Ontario. We bought the same exact products that Americans were using, made by the same company. We paid 1/10 the price of what is paid in America. And that's because in Canada, they control the cost of drug prices. In this country, we don't. And right now, Norma, we are just beginning, didn't go as far as I want, to tell the pharmaceutical industry they cannot continue to kill people, cannot continue to charge us the highest prices in the world for their products. So let me thank all of our panelists. And now what I'd like to do is open it up to you, kind of make your questions brief. Misty, who else do we have? We have Oliver here? All right, we got one, raise your hand so everyone can see you. Two, Misty, you'll be on the right, Oliver, you'll be on the left. Raise your hand or stand up, better yet, stand up if you got a question that you want to ask. Okay.
Well, we'll take this question.
Okay.
Surprised me there. Hi, Senator Sanders. It's Sue Dinsdale. Thank you for everything. It's good to see you again. I'm the director of Iowa Citizen Action Network, and what this family budget does is help every single one of our members and my own family personally. And I think $3.5 trillion is a pretty small price to pay to help all of us. I'm worried about Manchin and Sinema. Do you think we're going to be able to get them on board?
Well, look, as I said earlier, what we are trying to do is not only unprecedented, it would be a hell of a lot easier if we had 60 or 70 people in the Senate, Democrats and Republicans, who are prepared to stand up for working families. We don't have it now. And I'm very proud, and Leader Chuck Schumer deserves credit for that in the Senate, Nancy Pelosi in the House, for with tiny, tiny margins, able to pass the American Rescue Plan. But I believe that at the end of the day, after a lot of negotiations and pain, and I'm going to be on the phone all week, what we are going to do is pass the most comprehensive bill for working families that this country has seen in a long way, with the 50 votes plus the vice president. And I also want to say that I want to thank the president, because what Biden has done in this process is something that no president has done in our lifetime. What he has done is take a hard look at the real issues facing the American people. And he has said, let's go forward and let's do it. Now, did he do everything that I wanted to do? No. But he has taken us a significant step forward. And all of the proposals that he has raised are going to be in this reconciliation bill.
Bernie, I have one question. Do you think you're leaving somebody out? The disabled, the workforce. We could be a powerful workforce.
Now, we're not leaving the disabled out. In fact, in this, look, again, I'm not here to tell you, all I'm here to tell you, this is the most consequential, one minute, the most consequential piece of legislation in the modern history of this country. Does it solve all of our problems? No. Do we need Medicare for all? Yeah. Should we be investing more in climate? Yeah. Now, what it does for the people with disabilities, which is a very, very big deal, what it says that people who have disabilities who otherwise might be forced to go into a nursing home will be able to stay home and get the care they need. That's a big deal. Okay, Misty, you got a question? Yeah.
Can you hear me? There he goes.
Stand up if you could.
Hello? Okay. Quick one. For fighting for working class people since the 1970s when you got involved in politics. And the question is about climate. As we can see, yeah. You're good.
Okay.
My question is about climate change. So as we've seen with natural disaster after natural disaster like Hurricane Katrina and now probably Hurricane Ida today, will there be in this reconciliation bill like federal funding to help people who are displaced by climate change with these natural disasters? Because as we've seen, especially with the Hurricane Katrina incident back 16 years ago, the federal government, state governments, city councils can be extremely slow getting emergency spending out. So I'm wondering just dedicated for federal for emergencies when they are
Yes.
a complete surprise.
The answer is absolutely. Look, we're going to do our best here. And again, I wish I could tell you it's going to be better. But this will be unprecedented in the amount of money we're spending trying to prevent future disasters and also helping those people who experience the kind of very expensive disasters that we have seen here in Iowa. We have seen people lose their homes, been displaced. There will be money available to help rebuild those communities. Oliver, you got somebody? All right.
Is this
Yep.
thing working?
Yep.
Hi, Senator Sanders. Thank you so much for being here. You're a beacon of hope for a lot of us here in a purple state, hopefully turning blue. But I just had a quick question about mental health care. Is there anything in this package that will help the people who are deeply hurting beyond the physical side effects of this pandemic?
The answer is absolutely. There are billions of dollars going into the mental health crisis. Look, it is, one of the things that is just unbelievable is you all know we are spending far more than any other country per person on healthcare. And yet we don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough nurses, we don't have enough dentists, we certainly do not have enough mental health practitioners. The problem was a crisis before the pandemic. It is much worse now. So to answer your question, yes, there will be billions of dollars going into mental health. But I also want to say to the young people who are here, we need your help. We need young people to go into nursing, into mental health, into medical school, to become doctors, to become teachers. We need to rebuild the public sector of this country, which has been ignored for so many years. But to answer your question, look, mental health is a crisis for the kids in schools. It's a crisis for working families. It's a crisis for everybody in every state in this country. So the answer is yes, there will be money in this bill to start a job. Not that I can tell you it's going to do everything that needs to be done, but it will address some of the crisis. Yeah.
Hi, thanks, Senator Sanders, for coming out here. I just wanted to quickly ask whether or not there's any chance in the reconciliation bill that there will be an option to reform or eliminate the filibuster, whether it is to make it a talking filibuster again, to reduce the threshold, anything other. I mean, I'm for completely get rid of it myself, but anything that we could do in the reconciliation bill on this issue.
Well, I agree with you. In my view, didn't always feel this way, but I do believe now. I believe we should get rid of the filibuster and allow majority rule. But unless I'm very mistaken, we do not have the votes to do this at this moment.
Thank you. Senator Sanders, we're hearing from Congress itself, members.
Hold up, Mike, a little bit closer to your mouth.
Thank you. About the desire to lower the amount of the package for the reconciliation package. And I'm a mom, a grandmother. I have over 40 years working in the early education field. And I volunteer with Save the Children Action Network. And it's a passion of mine for children birth through 5 to be educated. What can we do to ensure that the child care industry and the universal pre-K actually do make it and get the money they deserve?
Well, it is, first of all, thank you so much. People who work in childcare and pre-K make huge sacrifices. I don't know about Iowa, but my guess is it's not different than Vermont. Wages and benefits are extremely low. And that has got to change. What psychologists tell us that 0 through 4 are the most important years of human development, and we have got to respect our little children, regardless of the income of their families, to get a decent start in life. So all I can tell you, I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that that package is, and we're talking about many hundreds of billions of dollars, to build the facilities that we need, to lower the cost for families, to make sure that child care workers get the pay they deserve, which should not be less than other teachers, by the way, for the important work that they do. Thank you for what you're doing.
Hi, Senator Sanders. My name's Robert Morrison. I'm from the other Burlington down the road, Burlington, Iowa. And I cannot let you get out of Iowa without thanking you. Siemens closed the factory I worked in for over 31 years, 2 years ago, and you are the only public official that came out and said this plant closing was wrong. Actually, Chris has you on video saying that. So I want to thank you for not only for that, but for standing up for working people like me that have lost our jobs. And I firmly believe we can help Vice President Harris and President Biden build back better. I would love to use the talents I've got acquired over the last 30 years to help young people learn the machinist trade.
We desperately need you. We desperately need you. You know, I was just the other day in Vermont talking to a person working in vocational training in Vermont for high school kids. Desperately need experienced older workers to give the kids the skills they need. Look, we are talking about the largest, combining everything, the largest infrastructure piece of legislation in the history of this country. By far, we're going to need a huge numbers of people to build roads and bridges and homes. We need skilled workers to help educate the young people. And this bill, if passed, will give you the opportunity to do that.
Thank you, because when our plant closed, President Trump, Governor Reynolds, and Senators Grassley and others all turned their back on us. And you were the only one who came out and stood with us. And I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you for your work.
I have another question over here, Senator.
Thank you for being out here today, Senator Sanders. My grandparents, 3 of them, my maternal grandfather and grandmother and my paternal grandfather, served in the United States military, 2 in the Air Force and 1 in the Army Corps of Engineering. And I knew my grandfathers to have trembling hands and hair-trigger tempers from traumas suffered during their time in service. And with the withdrawal from Afghanistan and the current state of the American system's treatment of veterans and care of veterans, I am deeply worried for these new traumatized soldiers. And I'm wondering what this bill does to reform the veterans care state.
Good question, and please thank your grandparents for their service for our country.
I do, every day.
The point that you made, and I speak to you as the former chairman of the U.S. Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, and we did our best to bring billions of dollars into the VA healthcare system. I think people do not appreciate what many of our veterans have gone through. And seeing what they see is, in a sense, what human beings should not be forced to see. And they come home with those scars physically and emotionally. This bill would put at least $19 billion into improving the VA facilities around this country, at the very least. There'll be other provisions as well. But thank you again very much for raising that important issue.
Hi, Bernie. It's great to have you here in Cedar Rapids. I always love to come out and listen to what you have to say. I'm going to ask you exactly the same question I asked you 2 years ago in Anamosa, Iowa, and that is, when are you and the United States Congress going to end the racist, idiotic drug war?
Well, I'm probably happy to give you a better answer than I gave you 2 years ago, in the sense that I think we're making progress. Look, my own view is that the so-called war on drugs has been an abysmal failure. It has destroyed God knows how many lives, disproportionately African American and Latino. What you are now seeing is a radical change of consciousness with regard to that war. You're seeing state after state after state legalizing marijuana. I would legalize marijuana nationally. I am supportive of that, but we are making some progress in state after state.
Okay, I'm right over here.
Hi, Senator Sanders. I worked for you in 2016 here in Iowa, went through the platform process. Okay?
And we won the popular vote. Thank you for your help.
You bet, all right? And I've been doing this work for a long time. I was a conscientious objector during Vietnam and growing up along Lake Erie when we used to go see the fish kills, all right? So.
Hold the mic a little bit closer to your mouth.
Okay, sure. I have two-part question. First of all, does it look like the opportunity zones are going to maintain themselves forward? Okay, that's number one. And the second is, as an educator, I used to teach at the University of Iowa in sociology, 11 years. I now work in rural economic development. And one of my greatest concerns is the division in the nation isn't about jobs. The division in the nation is about how we see the world. And when you were born, knowledge was doubling once every 100 years. Now it's twice a day, right? And nobody here can keep up with what's going on in change. And we're doing nothing about, once you graduate from wherever, now what do we do to keep up? Because press cannot handle it, and we can't handle it by ourselves, as evidenced by the division of the nation. And so I'm wondering, I'd love to talk with you further, but that to me is one of the base infrastructures, is what do we do with people after they graduate that help them understand the world that's changing so fast?
Well, I think the answer is education and learning is an inherent part of who we are as human beings from the age of whatever, from when we were born to when we die. And we should have in this country a system which enables all people, regardless of their age, to continue, to get the education that they deserve. In some cases, it's very specific. People lose their jobs, they need a new job. They need job training. But you as an elderly person should be able to get the education they need just to keep up as a human being with what's going on in the world. So we need big changes in education. This bill doesn't do everything. It is an important step forward.
Thanks, Senator Sanders and all the speakers. Thanks for having this town hall today. The Obama-era $7,500 tax credit for electric vehicles has expired for General Motors, Tesla, and by the end of the year, it looks like Nissan as well. Is there a plan for electric vehicle incentives in this budget reconciliation package, and if so, what form?
A very significant plan for that. Look, President has indicated, and I support it. If we're talking about reducing carbon emissions, transportation is one of the areas that we have to talk about. Making our buildings, our older buildings, more energy efficient, dealing with agriculture. We have to deal with all of those and more. So to answer your question, yes, where the bill is right now, we are going to start from scratch. You want to buy an electric vehicle, not only will you get that $7,500, I hope, at point of sale, that $7,500 rebate. If its product is made in America, you're going to get another $2,500. If it's made by union labor, you're going to get another $2,500. So the answer to your question is a big yes. All right, I think we're not going to be able to take all of the questions. Let's take a couple more. Yes, sir. Pound that mic.
Okay. Hi, Bernie. I'm Grant Wilson from Des Moines. And I agree with you about trying to erase student loan debt, as I think it's bringing college graduates down. I've heard of President Biden recently erase student loan debt for disabled people. And it sounds like he might be in favor of starting to raise more student loan debt. I just wondered if you could explain where, it sounds like it might be his decision, or where you and your colleagues, where President Biden might sit at this moment thinking about doing more with student loan debt.
The answer is, I believe, it is just incredibly sad when you think about it. Young people are told, go out and get an education. So they do the right thing. They get an education, it's the right thing to do, gives them job skills. Then they become a teacher, maybe they make $25,000, $30,000 a year. Or they graduate medical school, if you like, $400,000 in debt, and they're gonna pay off these student debts. So I would go a lot further than the president would go on this issue. But I think there are a number of us in Congress, not a majority yet, that would make a significant step forward in reducing student debt in this country. It's an ongoing debate. We're making progress. This bill does not deal with it in the way I would like it to, but we are making some progress, okay?
Great. Sounds good.
All right, why don't we just take maybe one question more there, one question more there. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Senator. If Sinema and Manchin agreed to vote for the bill for a smaller price tag, would you make that compromise? And if so, how much money and what parts of the bill would you be willing to compromise?
I'm not going to get into that here. I think we are going to get a $3.5 trillion bill. I've already made a compromise. I should tell you that on the Budget Committee, of which there are 11 Democrats, 9 of them supported a $6 trillion bill, which is what I wrote and wanted. So I've already made a compromise. And the truth is this bill is not addressing, as we've heard this afternoon, many of the issues that should be addressed. At the end of the day, I am confident that we will pass this bill at $3.5 trillion. Okay, last question.
Thank you. So I have a question about the $15 minimum wage.
Yep.
My grandma works at Enzyme Corporation in Bellevue, Iowa, and she's never made more than $11 in the 20-something years she's worked there, since the 90s. What can people like me do to convince people like Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema that we need a higher minimum wage?
Well, I wish, look, let me give you the good news and the bad news. The good news is that state after state is in fact passing $15 an hour legislation. A number of states have done it, a number of cities have done it, so we're making progress in the same sense that we're making progress in legalizing marijuana. The bad news is it's not just Sinema and Manchin. There are no Republicans. You know, I've been all over this state, and I have talked to workers who are making that $9 and $10 and $11 an hour trying to raise their kids. It is an outrage. And the minimum wage, $15 an hour, is surely not a lot of money. That's where we should be. I've introduced the legislation to do that. We have 0 Republican support in the Senate for that. And I'm not happy to tell you 8 Democrats who voted against raising the minimum wage. We are working on that. We are working on that. The president is working on that. And I hope that I can report back to you sooner than later that we're going to pass that damn $15 an hour minimum wage. All right, let me just, I want to thank all of you for coming out. You know, this is not a political rally. This is an effort to discuss major legislation. And my feeling is that all over this country, people are they're hungry to learn about what the hell is going on in Washington. So I really thank all of you for being here. I thank our speakers. I thank Stacy. I thank our musicians. And let me just conclude what I said earlier on. These are tough times. And it's a time not for demagoguery. It is a time to understand the severity of the crises that we face, the economic crises, the social crises, the climate crises that we face, to look at them boldly, not to hide them, not to demagogue the issue. And if we do that, I am absolutely confident that if we come together as a nation, we will not only solve these issues, we're going to move this country forward in a better direction. Thank you all very much for being here.